I never thought much about wrestling until I met him. That sounds dramatic, I know, but it's true. I'd been on the team for 3 years at that point, going through the motions, winning enough matches to keep my scholarship, losing enough to stay humble. It was just something I did, like brushing my teeth or checking my phone before bed. But then Finn walked into the gym one Tuesday afternoon in September, and suddenly every single thing about wrestling felt different. He wasn't on the team. That was the first thing I noticed. Our practice space was pretty exclusive, tucked away in the older athletics building where most students never ventured. But there he was, standing in the doorway with a gym bag slung over his shoulder, looking lost in that way that somehow made him more attractive. He had this mess of dark hair that fell across his forehead, and when he pushed it back, I saw these green eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Coach Martinez called out to him. Turned out Finn was a transfer student, had wrestled at his previous school, wanted to keep training even though he wasn't competing anymore. Something about focusing on his classes, keeping wrestling as just a workout thing. Coach said he could use our space during open gym hours as long as he pulled his weight and didn't distract the team. I remember thinking that last part was going to be a problem. The first time we actually talked, I was running through drills alone. Most of the guys had cleared out, but I was trying to fix this thing with my stance that kept getting me taken down in matches. Finn walked over, watched me for maybe 30 seconds, then quietly said, "Your weight's too far forward." I stopped, looked at him. Up close, he was even more distracting. He had this small scar above his left eyebrow and shoulders that suggested he knew exactly what he was doing on a mat. "What?" "Your stance. You're leaning too far forward. Makes it easy to shoot under you." He dropped his bag. "Want me to show you?" We spent the next hour drilling together, his hands on my hips, adjusting my position, his voice low and patient as he explained weight distribution and balance points. Every time he touched me, I felt this electric current run through my body that had nothing to do with wrestling technique. When we finally stopped, both of us sweating and breathing hard, he smiled at me for the first time. A real smile, not just polite. And I felt something in my chest shift, like furniture being rearranged in a room I thought I knew by heart. After that, Finn became a regular fixture in my training. He'd show up during open gym, and somehow we'd always end up as partners. We fell into this easy rhythm, the kind of physical communication that happens between wrestlers who trust each other. He'd shoot for a takedown, I'd sprawl, we'd scramble for position, and the whole time there was this unspoken conversation happening through pressure and movement and breath. But it was more than just the physical stuff. We started talking between rounds, during water breaks, in those quiet moments when the gym emptied out and it was just us and the echo of our voices against the walls. I learned that he was majoring in architecture, that he'd transferred because his previous school didn't have the program he wanted, that he'd quit competitive wrestling because the pressure had stopped being fun. He told me about his family back in Portland, about his little sister who wanted to be a marine biologist, about how he couldn't cook to save his life and basically survived on protein shakes and whatever the dining hall was serving. I told him things too, things I didn't usually talk about. How wrestling was the only place I felt completely in control of my body and my mind. How my parents didn't really get why I'd chosen this sport, why I'd want to cut weight and get thrown around on a mat for fun. How sometimes I felt like I was just going through the motions of college, checking boxes, waiting for real life to start. "This is real life," Finn said one evening. We were sitting against the wall, both of us exhausted from a particularly brutal drilling session. Like, right now, this moment, it's not a rehearsal. I looked at him, at the way the fluorescent lights caught the sweat on his collarbone, at the way he was looking back at me with this intensity that made my breath catch. "Yeah," I managed. "I guess you're right." The thing is, I'd known I was attracted to guys for a while. Not exclusively, but definitely not exclusively into women either. I'd had a thing with a guy my freshman year, Nothing serious, just some making out at parties and one awkward sleepover that we both pretended never happened afterward. I dated a girl sophomore year for a few months. It was fine. Everything was always fine. I'd accepted this about myself in a quiet, private way, but I'd never really felt the ground shift beneath me because of it. Until Finn. This was different. This wasn't just attraction or curiosity or hormones. This was me lying awake at night, thinking about the way he laughed, the way he said my name, the way his hand felt on my shoulder when he was teaching me a new technique. This was me checking my phone constantly to see if he'd texted. This was me planning my gym schedule around when he might show up. This was me feeling this ache in my chest every time he left, like something important was walking out the door. I tried to be cool about it. I tried to tell myself it was just a crush, that it would pass, that I was reading too much into friendly behavior. But then there were these moments that made me think maybe, possibly, I wasn't imagining things. Like the time we were drilling and he pinned me, and instead of immediately letting go like you're supposed to, he stayed there for just a second too long. His face inches from mine, his breath warm against my cheek. Or the time we went to get food after practice, and he paid for my meal before I could stop him, and when I protested, he just shrugged and said, "You can get it next time." Like there was no question there would be a next time, and many times after that, or the way he'd sometimes just look at me, really look at me, with this expression I couldn't quite read but that made my heart race every single time. My teammate Marcus noticed something was up. We were in the locker room after practice one day, and he said, "So what's the deal with you and the transfer guy?" I tried to play it casual. "Finn? No deal. He's just a training partner." Marcus gave me this look, like he could see right through me. "Uh-huh. That why you're always here late on the nights he shows up?" "I'm working on my technique." "Sure, man. Whatever you say." He grabbed his bag. "For what it's worth, he seems cool, and he's clearly into the training sessions with you." I wanted to ask what he meant by that. Wanted to know if Marcus had noticed something I'd missed, but he was already walking out, and I was left alone with my racing thoughts and the smell of disinfectant and sweat. The big match was coming up. Conference championship. I'd qualified in my weight class, which was honestly a surprise to everyone, including me. I'd had a good season, better than usual, and I knew it was because of Finn. Training with him had sharpened my skills, sure, but more than that, it had given me something to prove, some reason to push harder, to be better. I mentioned the match to him one evening. We were cooling down after a session, stretching out our shoulders and backs. "It's next Friday," I said, trying to sound casual. "At the field house. Probably won't be many people there. Wrestling's not exactly a spectator sport." Finn looked up from the stretch he was doing. "What time?" 7. "But seriously, you don't have to." "I'll be there." Something about the way he said it, the certainty in his voice, made my stomach flip. "Yeah? Of course." He stood up, grabbed his water bottle. "I want to see you compete, see all that technique we've been working on in action." I tried to imagine Finn in the stands, watching me wrestle. Tried to imagine knowing he was there, his eyes on me. The thought was both terrifying and thrilling. "Okay," I said. "Cool. That'd be cool." He smiled, and I felt that furniture in my chest shift again, rearranging itself into a new configuration I didn't quite recognize yet but was starting to understand. The week leading up to the match was torture. Not because of nerves about the competition, though those were there too, but because I couldn't stop thinking about Finn watching me. I kept playing it out in my head, imagining his face in the crowd, wondering what he'd think, whether I'd make him proud or embarrass myself completely. We trained together twice that week. Both times, there was this new energy between us, this unspoken thing that felt like it was building towards something. Our drills got more intense, more focused. When we grappled, it felt like we were having a conversation we couldn't have with words. His hands on me felt different, Or maybe I was just more aware of them. Every point of contact felt significant, loaded with meaning. On Thursday night, the day before the match, we stayed late again. The gym was empty except for us, the lights harsh and bright overhead. We'd been drilling for over an hour, and we were both exhausted, but neither of us wanted to stop. Finally, Finn called time, and we collapsed onto the mat, lying on our backs, breathing hard. "You're going to do great tomorrow," he said, his voice echoing slightly in the empty space. I turned my head to look at him. He was staring up at the ceiling, his chest rising and falling with his breath. "How do you know?" "Because you're good. Really good. You just don't believe it yet." He turned his head too, so we were looking at each other. "But you will." We lay there like that for a moment, just looking at each other, and I felt this overwhelming urge to say something, to tell him what I was feeling, to close the distance between us. But I couldn't. Fear held me back, the same fear that had kept me safe and lonely for so long. "I should get going," Finn said finally, sitting up. "Big day tomorrow. You need to rest." I wanted to ask him to stay, wanted to suggest we get food or just keep talking or anything that would extend this moment. But instead I just said, "Yeah, okay." We packed up our stuff in silence. At the door, Finn paused. "Hey, Adrian." "Yeah." "I'm proud of you. Whatever happens tomorrow, just so you know." And then he was gone, and I was standing alone in the doorway, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. Friday arrived. I went through my classes in a daze, barely able to focus on lectures or conversations. My mind was split between the match and Finn, between what I had to do on the mat and what I wanted to say off it. By the time evening rolled around, I was a mess of nerves and anticipation. The field house was exactly as I'd predicted, sparsely populated. A few parents, some teammates not competing that night, a handful of wrestling enthusiasts who showed up to every match. The mats were set up in the center of the space, surrounded by a few rows of bleachers. The overhead lights gave everything this stark, clinical quality. I was warming up, going through my pre-match routine, trying to get my head in the game. My coach was talking to me about strategy, about my opponent's weaknesses, about staying aggressive and trusting my training. I was nodding, hearing the words without really processing them, and then I saw him. Finn was walking into the field house, scanning the bleachers. He was wearing jeans and a dark blue hoodie, his hair slightly damp like he'd just showered. He spotted the section where the spectators were sitting and made his way over, but he didn't sit in the back or in the middle. He walked all the way down to the front row, right at mat level, and took a seat directly across from where I was warming up. Our eyes met. He raised his hand in a small wave, and then he smiled. That same real smile from our first training session, the one that made everything in my world rearrange itself. My teammate Marcus nudged me. "Dude, your training partner's here." "Yeah," I said, unable to look away from Finn. "I see him. Front row. That's commitment." The match started. My opponent was good, aggressive, the kind of wrestler who never stopped moving. But I barely thought about him, because every time I was in position, every time I set up for a move, every time I glanced toward the edge of the mat, Finn was there. And he wasn't just watching, he was locked in, completely focused, like nothing else in the world existed except me and that mat. His eyes followed every movement, every scramble, every position change. When I scored a takedown, I saw him lean forward, his hands gripping his knees. When I got caught in a bad position, I saw the tension in his shoulders, the way he seemed to be wrestling along with me, his body mirroring my effort. It was the most intense experience of my life. Not just the match itself, but knowing he was there, knowing he was watching, knowing that every single thing I did mattered to him. It was like wrestling under a spotlight that only illuminated the space between us. I won. Not easily, but decisively. When the ref raised my hand, the first thing I did was look at Finn. He was on his feet, clapping, this huge grin on his face, and in that moment, everything became crystal clear. The furniture in my chest finally settled into its new arrangement, and I understood what it had been trying to tell me all along. I was in love with him. After the match, after I'd shaken hands and talked to my coach and accepted congratulations from teammates, I found Finn waiting by the exit. He was leaning against the wall, that same easy posture I'd seen 100 times in the gym, but something felt different now. Everything felt different. "You were incredible," he said as I approached. "You stayed the whole time." It wasn't a question, but he answered anyway. "Of course I did. I told you I'd be here." He pushed off the wall, closing the distance between us. "I wouldn't have missed it for anything." We stood there in the hallway outside the field house, people streaming past us, and I knew this was the moment. This was real life, not a rehearsal, just like he'd said, and I had to be brave enough to live it. "Can we go somewhere?" I asked. "To talk?" Something flickered in his eyes. Hope, maybe, or recognition. Yeah, definitely. We ended up at my apartment. My roommate was gone for the weekend, so it was just us and the quiet and the weight of everything unsaid hanging in the air. I made us both tea, mostly because I needed something to do with my hands, and we sat on my couch with our mugs, not quite touching, but close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. "I need to tell you something," I started, and my voice sounded strange to my own ears, shaky and uncertain. Finn set his mug down on the coffee table. "Okay. I don't really know how to say this. I've never been good at this kind of thing, but watching you tonight, in that front row, the way you were looking at me..." I took a breath. "Finn, I have feelings for you. Real feelings. Not just training partner feelings or friendship feelings. I think about you all the time. I look forward to seeing you more than anything else in my day. When you're around, everything feels more vivid, more real. And I don't know if you feel the same way, and I'm terrified of ruining what we have, but I can't keep pretending I don't feel this way." The silence that followed felt endless. I couldn't look at him, couldn't bear to see rejection or pity or confusion in his eyes. I stared at my hands, at my tea, at the worn fabric of my couch. And then Finn laughed. Not a mean laugh, but something soft and almost relieved. "Adrian, look at me." I forced myself to meet his eyes. "Why do you think I kept showing up to train with you?" he asked gently. "Why do you think I rearranged my entire schedule around open gym hours? Why do you think I sat in the front row tonight and couldn't take my eyes off you for a single second?" My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. "I don't know. Because I feel the same way. I have since that first day, when you let me help with your stance, even though you had no idea who I was. Every time we train together, every conversation we have, every moment I spend with you, I fall a little bit more." He reached out, his hand finding mine. "I've been trying to figure out how to tell you. I kept hoping you'd notice, that you'd see it, but you're kind of oblivious sometimes." I laughed, and it came out shaky, almost like a sob. "I'm oblivious?" "Incredibly." He squeezed my hand. "But it's one of the things I love about you." "Love?" The word felt huge, impossible. "Yeah." He said it simply, like it was the easiest thing in the world. "I love you, Adrian. I'm in love with you." I don't remember who moved first. Maybe we both did at the same time. But suddenly, we were kissing. And it was nothing like the fumbling attempts from my freshman year or the okay kisses with my ex-girlfriend. This was everything clicking into place, every question finding its answer, every lonely moment leading to this one perfect moment of connection. When we finally pulled apart, both of us breathing hard again, but for completely different reasons than on the wrestling mat, Finn rested his forehead against mine. So what now? "Now," I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in months, maybe years. Now we figure it out together. And we did. Not all at once, not perfectly, but together. We started dating, officially, though it felt less like a beginning and more like a continuation of something that had already been happening. We kept training together, but now there was no pretense, no careful distance. We'd drill and grapple, and then we'd kiss between rounds, and it felt like the most natural thing in the world. I came out to my team, to my friends, to my family. It was scary and liberating and complicated and simple all at once. Some people were surprised, some people weren't, some people needed time to adjust, but having Finn beside me made it all manageable. He held my hand through the hard conversations and celebrated with me through the good ones. Marcus cornered me in the locker room a few weeks later. "I knew it," he said, grinning. "The way you two looked at each other during training. Dead giveaway. Why didn't you say something? Because you needed to figure it out yourself." He clapped me on the shoulder. "But for what it's worth, I'm happy for you, man. He's good people, and you've been different since you met him. Better different." He was right. I was different. I was braver, more honest, more willing to take risks and be vulnerable. Finn had shown me that real life wasn't something waiting to happen in the future. It was happening right now, in every training session and quiet conversation and moment of connection. The best part, though, was the small moments. Finn showing up to every single one of my matches, always in the front row, always completely focused on me. Me teaching him to cook actual meals instead of surviving on protein shakes. Late nights in my apartment or his dorm room, talking about everything and nothing, his head on my shoulder or my head on his chest. The easy physical comfort we'd built on the wrestling mat translating into everyday affection, casual touches that still made my heart race. One night, a few months into our relationship, we were lying in bed together. Finn was tracing patterns on my arm, his touch light and absent-minded. "Hey," he said softly, "remember that first day, when I corrected your stance? How could I forget? I almost didn't say anything. I almost just walked past you. But something made me stop." He looked at me, his green eyes serious. "I'm really glad I stopped." I kissed him, slow and sweet. "Me too. Even though I'm oblivious. Especially because you're oblivious. It makes life interesting." He laughed and pulled me closer, and I thought about how wrestling had brought us together, how something I'd been doing by rote for years had suddenly become the path to the most important person in my life. I thought about that front row seat, about Finn's unwavering focus, about how sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit what you're feeling and hope the other person feels the same way. I thought about real life, happening right now, in this moment, with this person, and I knew with absolute certainty that this was exactly where I was supposed to be.